to the Mind Body Podcast for Sports. My name is JC Boyle.
And my name is Skylar Myris.
Today, during this episode, we will be taking a closer look at the effects of a restrictive diet on a student athlete. Today, we are joined by a UMD student athlete who will help us look at the possible signs that teammates may recognize in each other and themselves to shed light on the mental, physical, and social impacts restrictive diets might have on an athlete. Welcome to the podcast, Maddie.
Thank you. My name's Maddie, and I've been doing cheerleading for 12 years.
So, today we'll be taking a look with Maddie at the various influences that coaches and peers and anyone of close influence on the athlete might have on the development of a restrictive diet or an eating disorder. We'll be delving a little bit into something like societal and sports beauty standards, social comparison, the effects of coaching styles, as well as peer-to-peer dynamics.
Alrighty, so I'll delve into those topics a little bit more before we get started on questions. So for societal beauty standards, we kind of look at how society thinks women should look or act, and a lot of this is depicted in social media and seeing this like air quotations perfect body type where you have a certain figure and you're a certain weight and you have this, you don't have that, and it's what but what some individuals may look up to as perfection, even though those beauty standards can never really be reached because a lot of them are just photoshopped. Social comparison is an upward or downward comparison to peers. So you look at someone and be like, oh, they're much better than me because they look this way or they act this way, or a downward comparison where you look at someone and you say, I'm much better than this person because I have this trait that they might be lacking. The effects of coaching styles is how coaches' expectations may affect an individual's relationship with their physique and therefore their food. And then peer dynamics, which is how teammates view their bodies and how that can influence one another.
So, Maddie, if you don't mind, we're going to start getting into some questions. So hopefully you can shed a little light for us on some of these topics. So just to get started, how long have you been doing your sport, and what was the highest level of competition you went to with your sport?
So I've been doing cheerleading for 12 years. I did all-star cheer, high school cheer, and then I cheered for the school. So for all-star cheer, the highest competition I got to was Worlds, which is the big competition for all of all-star cheer. I competed there twice. For high school cheer, the highest competition was States, which I did, and then just being on the D1 varsity team and doing the games and stuff is a high level.
Yeah, those are very impressive levels. I'm sure you have a lot of energy expenditure going on, so it's good to talk about nutrition with the D1 cheerleader. So were there any aspects about the culture of your sport that tended to promote a certain body type, or do you think your team tended to value different body types and levels of strength?
Definitely for like the recent years on the college team and in high school, there was a lot more dialogue about body positivity, valuing strength over a certain like weight or physique. As long as you were strong, that was important. Earlier, when I was younger in all-star cheer, there was definitely a lot more of a focus on how you looked rather than how strong you were in your uniform and in your position, which is negative, but in recent years it has gotten better.
It's good to know that the dialogue going around, especially with social media, was able to facilitate that sort of conversation in schools and in club competition sports. So I just wanted to ask, how was your relationship with nutrition during most of the competitive years for your sports, and did you find it difficult to keep up with the amount of energy you were expending every day?
Yeah, definitely. In college, it was harder because I didn't have as strict as a routine that I followed. In high school and middle school, I had a strict routine with school, and my mom would make food, so I was able to eat enough, whereas in college it was providing for myself, which was sometimes hard to find options that were able to fuel me for the amount of calories I was burning. Um, so it was difficult, but like manageable, I guess.
Definitely. JC and I talked about this on our podcast, but just how some athletes sometimes lose focus once they get to college, and they might put their focus into sports, creating new friendships, adjusting to actual college life, and may lose focus on eating. And I kind of saw myself do that, like even as a non-athlete, because when I would come home from swim practice during high school, there's usually always a meal on the table for me, which was so nice. But nowadays, even if I like go to the gym and then I come home, I'm like, well, I need to shower, get dressed, and then just go straight to class or get straight to work with my homework. And I usually like tend to ignore those hunger cues and just keep working through it, which, you know, just has a negative impact because I'm not as focused on my work. And then I usually just tend to get up and leave early to go eat.
So with that, that's a great transition, Skylar, into the sort of mental and physical effects that neglecting your nutrition and diet might have on your body. You're talking about how it's harder to manage kind of when you're on your own growing up. Maddie, I wanted to ask you, how do you think moments of poor nutrition might have impacted your mental and physical well-being?
I could definitely notice on the days where I ate less, because I felt it physically. I would have brain fog during classes, just feeling like my brain was moving slowly. And then during another aspect of my life, I got really bad insomnia because I wasn't eating enough, and that would keep me up. And then even after I would eat really late at night, I'd still be awake. And then, so then when you're not sleeping and working, doing physically taxing activities, your muscles aren't healing, so then you feel it during the day. So you really do feel this physical symptoms and mental symptoms when you don't eat compared to when you do.
Yeah, and just one kind of, I guess, anecdotal part about what you were alluding to with your muscles not having time to recover. So speaking to you last semester, I remember during your last semester being fully on the UMD cheer team, the amount of times that you would tell us how much Benadryl or Advil you had to take just to kind of get through the night, just for your muscles to feel like not even ideal, just not awful. It was just, yeah, I can imagine if you're lacking proper sleep and nutrition and you're getting into this cycle, that just makes it all the worse. So with that, do you think there were days where you felt like your performance was impacted by not eating enough before a practice or before competition? And in what ways do you think your performance might have been impacted?
I know at practice, if I wasn't able to eat enough beforehand or throughout the day even, my maximum effort would be lower. Like I'd be giving my max effort, but the results would be lower than if I had eaten. And I could physically tell that. Like I could usually do this if I had eaten, but it's a lot harder. Just fatigue. I mean, cheer is a pretty high impact sport on your body, so just throwing things hurt so much more in the moment at practice. When you don't eat that day, things like that.
Yeah, and that just reminds me of when I was doing swim, and if I did not have enough to eat that day, and for example, God forbid, we were doing a test set, the kind of thing that just your coach is checking on you to make sure you're progressing the way you should be. If I didn't have enough food or water in my system, I felt it immediately, and the times that I was going would reflect it immediately. So I can only imagine that times, I mean, swim is a low impact sport, so I can only imagine that times 1,000 if you're catching bodies flying in the air for sport.
Did your coaches or teammates ever notice if you weren't performing as well, and if so, how did they react to that?
I don't think it was low enough to result in questioning about it. I know that in the past, there have been girls that have been restricting, like in high school, to the point where they had to take breaks from the team and just get themselves in a better mental place. But I think for a lot of athletes that have been performing at such a high level for as long as they have, it's easy to push past exhaustion, which is a mentality that a lot of coaches have, is pushing past the point of tired. So it's usual to just be exhausted and have your performance level like decrease throughout the practice, just because that's kind of what everybody's used to.
Definitely.
Yeah. So just speaking of your coaches or mentors, I know you're saying they might have not necessarily noticed when nutrition was off in their athletes, just because that can be tricky to spot. You don't know necessarily what factors are going into it, and like you said, a lot of coaches are very hardcore with the push past being tired mentality. So just with that, did you have any coaches or mentors who you thought were particularly helpful at promoting a healthy lifestyle to your team? Or if so, do you have examples of how they might have tried to help your team?
Yeah, so definitely in college and high school, college and high school, the dialogue has started shifting more dramatically in the sport of valuing strength, fueling your bodies, things like that. So I know in college the coaches tried to get resources, talks with nutritionists, other resources and places you could go to learn more about how to properly fuel our bodies, and like examples of what a rounded diet might look like. In early middle school, when things were still a little bit more focused on image, especially if you were a flyer, which is a person that's put in the air. Like there'd be a lot of like in passing comments, like before you leave for Thanksgiving break, like, oh, everybody have fun, eat what you want except the flyers, you can't do that, things like that.
Oh,
so
gosh.
it's gotten better now for sure, but a
These
lot
were middle school girls they were making those comments to?
Oh, like in 6th grade I was a flyer and I was
Jesus
told like don't eat what you want on Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's definitely shifted. Like in the past, more of the emphasis was the flyers have to maintain a certain weight, but now it's more so the people that are lifting them up have to strength condition and make themselves stronger,
Skill issue.
Yeah.
not the other way around. Yeah.
I honestly, I'm gonna take this back to a Netflix docuseries I watched a few years back, Cheer, and it just kind of shows a high level performance cheer team who I think goes to Worlds, but a lot of the comments that the women were making were about those societal beauty standards, and their main focus was like on flyers being as skinny as they can so they can be tossed up and do these amazing tricks, which is amazing for their sport. But you would just see girls weighing themselves every single day, tracking calories, tracking macros, everything to make sure. And sometimes the coaches would just say, like, you're a few pounds overweight, like, you really need to focus on, eating less or eating whatever to make sure that you're fitting this very precise expectation of what we have for you, which is how I think that kind of all ties it into the societal beauty standards.
Yeah, I mean, sports like cheer and gymnastics and those sorts of sports I know have been known to have issues with these coaches promoting sort of more restrictive diets, or not focusing so much on strengthening their athletes, because the sport is aesthetics and visual based, and especially for girls. I mean, of course, male gymnasts are allowed to get as strong as they want, but female gymnasts, I think we were talking about this last episode, female gymnasts, for example, just very recently have been able to kind of show off their maximum strength and how that sort of strength can help them in their sports. So with all of that, Maddie, I wanted to ask you, just to finish off, if you could give one key piece of nutrition advice to young girls who are starting up cheerleading, what would it be?
I would say that it's important to eat what your body needs. It might feel weird if you're need to eat more than your friends or other people that aren't performing at the level that they are as often as they are, which requires a lot more calories than the average person, but without it you will not be able to perform at the level that you could be. So it's important to actually fuel your body rather than restrict in order to fit what you think the image of what you should be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And just with what you said there, I just wanted to follow up. Like, have you noticed kind of a change in just your own mentality or the mentality of your teammates as you guys grow up and kind of have maybe less time to be concerned with such like futile things like how your body looks? Do you think that sort of maturity helps a little bit too?
Yeah, probably. There's definitely it's not definitely not a competition mentality, but it's hard when you practice in front of a mirror to not compare yourself to the other girls on the team. But I think now in recent years in college and high school, there's so much more dialogue around like body positivity, hyping everybody up instead of trying to push yourself forward and things like that. So it's gotten a lot more positive and healthy as an environment, I would say, which is good.
That's awesome.
Nice. A little quote that I want to kind of circle back to from what our Psych 336 Women in Psychology class. It states that eating disorders are not really about eating habits, even though that is the most obvious symptom of the problem. In fact, eating disorders are rarely even about food, and something we kind of talked about is just how people, but we're talking specifically about women, want to have this control over their bodies if they cannot have control of other things in their lives. And also how many people just have these associations with good and bad food in society, whereas like we might see chips or cookies as a bad food and other things as a good food, when in reality like food is just food, and it helps you fuel your body and your mind to do what you need to do in life.
Yeah, I do love that quote, and I love that we were able to end up on kind of a positive note with Maddie there, giving us some insight that it has gotten better in recent years. So there's a lot of negativity out there, and social media will always be social media, but I hope that everyone listening got something out of Maddie's insights, and I hope it's reassuring to know that this sort of toxicity has the potential to change and is changing. So
Yes.
with that, we will see you again in the next episode. Thank you, Maddie, so much for joining us, and we will see you then.